Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bake It Better with me, Kai. And today I'm going to show you how to make amazingly smooth, delicious, luxurious pastry cream. And you can use pastry cream to fill cream puffs or eclairs. I showed you how to make pâte dough last week, so you can use it in that. Or you can use it in anything else. It's basically a really rich, decadent custard. Sometimes people call it a baker's pudding. And it's way better than anything that you would ever make from a box. So I'll show you how to make a classic vanilla version and talk about other flavor variations too. And you'll see that this is really a basic technique and you can perfect this in no time. So to start, we have 3 cups of milk measured out. And I prefer using whole milk. If you only have skim or 2% on hand, it'll work. If you have a lower fat milk, it won't be quite as rich or thick or luxurious, but it'll still be delicious. It's homemade pastry cream. So to begin, you're going to add about 2.5 cups of the milk to your pot. Let's see if I can get it in there without spilling. And this can just be cold from the fridge because we're going to heat it up on here. And then we're going to add just half a cup of sugar. So this pastry cream is really lightly sweetened. It's a very sophisticated flavor. It's not over the head sweet. It's just really, really nice and elegant. So I'm going to add my sugar here. It's about 99 grams of sugar. And then we're just going to heat this over medium heat until it simmers and the sugar is dissolved. And we're going to talk about some flavor options at the very end, but also I want to point out here that the base of this is milk, so it's very easy to flavor milk. You could infuse fresh herbs into it if you wanted something like a basil pastry cream to get really fancy, or lavender, or use a tea, like if you wanted a jasmine or a green tea, you just flavor your milk. You can make a coffee milk and then use that as your base. So think about that before you start with your milk. Then there are some other options for the very end, like folding in things like chocolate or salted caramel, making it really luxurious. So while the sugar is dissolving, we're going to prepare the other portion of our pastry cream. So what is going to thicken this custard is a combination of cornstarch, flour, and egg yolks. The egg yolks also make it really, really rich and delicious. So in this bowl, I have about 1/4 cup or 28 grams of cornstarch and a tablespoon of all-purpose flour. And I'm just going to mix them together. And then we're going to add another half cup of milk. And then we're going to add our egg yolks to this mixture too. And the reason why this recipe, I'm using the King Arthur pastry cream recipe. The reason why this recipe only uses egg yolks instead of whites as well is because the yolk is where a lot of the fat is and the flavor. It also makes the pastry cream a gorgeous golden color. So you might see some recipes that call for whole eggs, and that's a great way to make a little bit of a stiffer pastry cream and you get a little bit more mileage out of your ingredients. So sometimes restaurants will do that. But if you're making something at home and you want to make just a really luxurious pudding to treat yourselves or your loved ones, just use whole egg yolks. It really gives a nice final product. So I'm keeping an eye on my milk and making sure that it doesn't get too hot, doesn't boil or scorch while I'm separating my yolks. There's lots of ways to separate egg yolks. Some people like to just use their very clean hands. My hands are super clean. So I will show you how to do it with my hands for the last version, and just kind of let it sift through their fingers. Or you can use your other eggshell. Your eggs are very clean as well. So for the hand version, you get your hands messy, but you just kind of shake. Oops. I guess that's why I like the shell version better. You can see like this, you just kind of strain it out and just make sure again that you wash your hands really well. So I'm just gonna wash my hands and then we're gonna add the yolks to this milk, cornstarch, flour version and whisk it up. So my hands are clean, our milk and sugar is simmering. I've got my 4 egg yolks. I'm going to save my whites to make something like meringue or souffle after. Don't just toss those out, they're really valuable for other recipes. Now I'm adding my 4 yolks to this mixture and I'm going to whisk it up. And if you've ever made the science experiment as a kid called oobleck, or sometimes people call it the goo, with cornstarch and water, you'll know that cornstarch can do some funky things. It has some special properties that make it act sometimes not like a liquid or a solid when it's mixed with something like water. That's because it's more of a suspension. The granules of the starch just get suspended in the liquid. But when you mix it with the yolks as well as the flour, it starts to dissolve. So basically what you need to take away from that is if you find any stiff spots, really make sure you use your whisk or a spatula to incorporate all of the cornstarch. And it might feel hard to incorporate at first, and that's because of that oobleck, that strange property. But just make sure it's all mixed in fully and keep working at it until it looks like a nice even mixture. So our milk and sugar is almost simmering, which means we're about to temper our eggs. So tempering is a technique that's used in lots of cooking and baking, and it's a way that you can raise the temperature of eggs or an egg-based mixture without cooking them. Because we all know about making scrambled eggs, and we're not going for scrambled eggs here in this lesson. Instead, we're going to try to slowly warm this thickening mixture with the yolks by adding a little bit of the hot milk to it and stirring quite vigorously. And then once it's nice and hot and the two temperatures of these liquids are much more similar, we can add all of this milk, yolk, flour, and cornstarch mixture back over the heat, and then we'll whisk it and we'll watch it thicken. And this is really where pastry cream does its magic. It just thickens up beautifully and takes on this really luscious, creamy texture. And we'll watch the egg yolks kind of turn a golden color, and it becomes really beautiful. So this is pretty close to simmering. I'll turn the temperature up just ever so slightly. The method that I like to use for getting this hot liquid into this bowl is using a ladle. Some people like to be really ambidextrous and pour the hot liquid in slowly and whisk with the other hand. It's great if you have a family member or someone to help with this step. Otherwise, if you're baking on your lonesome, just use a ladle and you can slowly kind of trickle it in. Remember, we don't want scrambled eggs, so we want this to be a gentle process, and then whisk. So we're starting to get some bubbles here, so I think we're pretty close. I'm just looking to make sure all of the sugar granules are dissolved. I'm running my ladle on the bottom of the pot. I don't feel any grains, so I think we're close. We're just about to simmer. Turn it up one more notch. So I'm starting to see some movement here, so we're ready to temper our eggs. So I'm going to use a spatula, get this as close as possible, and just kind of slowly add in this hot milk while I'm stirring with the other hand. And this will help make the heat distribute evenly and prevent any scrambling. The amount of hot milk mixture that you should add to your eggs doesn't need to be very exact. I'm just going to turn this down now because we don't want it to be a rapid boil. We're just trying to simmer here. This doesn't need to be very exact. Sometimes people say, you know, about 50% of the tempering liquid should be added. So if we had a cup of egg yolk mixture, add half a cup of the hot mixture. But you can just go until you feel like this is quite hot. You can even kind of test your temperature by holding it. And so I think at this point, I'm feeling good about this. And I'm just gonna turn this temperature down a little bit. So now this is whisked up, it's nice and hot. This is hot too. Be very careful while you pour this back into the remaining milk and sugar mixture. So some recipes, including our recipe, call for, at that moment, pouring the mixture through a sieve. I'm making this for myself and my family. We don't need a perfectly smooth, flawless pastry cream. I feel like I did a pretty good job of making sure the eggs weren't scrambled. But if this is your first time and you feel like maybe you did scramble some eggs or you had some chunks of cornstarch, you can pour that egg yolk mixture through a strainer or a sieve before it goes back onto the heat to get out any chunks, just as kind of a backup option. So do that if you want to, but you don't need to. So now this is where pastry cream is really coming into it. So if you come look at this texture, it's already starting to thicken up nicely. This looks like a lot more than just milk, but it's not quite there yet. So we're kind of bubbling in the middle here. I'm gonna stir this whole time, making sure that I'm getting into the corners of the pot. Sometimes the mistake bakers will make is when you use a whisk like this, you need to make sure that you get into the corners, otherwise the corners of the pastry cream can burn. And sometimes it feels like it's already thick and bubbling at this moment, but you want to really make sure that you're whisking it so that the heat is evenly distributed and it's nice and thick. So if you have an instant read thermometer, I'll just take this off the heat for a moment to check the temperature. So if you have an instant read thermometer, it should read at least 165 degrees, and that will ensure that the pastry cream will set up fully once it's off the heat. If you don't have an instant read thermometer, a few cues that you can use are primarily the viscosity. Some people don't like this analogy, but I hope this doesn't gross you out. It should look a little bit like mayonnaise. So when we go like this, I mean, I could probably cook it a little bit longer, but I like my pastry cream a little bit softer. So I think we're there. It will also set up because we're going to let it cool. We're also going to add some butter. So at this moment, we are going to add 113 grams. Actually, no, sorry. We're doing 57 grams of butter here. And we're also going to make this a classic vanilla bean pastry cream. So the reason why we don't just add vanilla extract into the milk right at the beginning is because extract is alcohol based. It will just burn off and then you'll lose all that lovely vanilla flavor. So save your vanilla bean save your vanilla extract for the end, or if you want to use real vanilla bean, you can split it and soak it in the milk during that first heating step and then strain it out afterwards. I am going to use something that's kind of in between an extract and the full bean. So we sell something at King Arthur Flour called Pure Vanilla Plus, which is sometimes also called Vanilla Crush. So it's a little bit thicker than vanilla extract, but it has the flecks of real vanilla bean in it. It's gorgeous. Tastes really great too. There's also vanilla bean paste, and that is even thicker than the extract. You want about 2 teaspoons of your favorite extract or one of these combinations of vanilla bean paste, and you pour it in at this step because it's not going to be heated anymore. So even though I'm a baker and I know baking is a science, I like to just eyeball vanilla because I don't want to waste any drop of it on the measuring spoon. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. You can come closer and look at this so that you can see the texture and the look at those flecks of vanilla bean. So gorgeous. And you'll watch as this, it kind of looks like a mess at this moment. We're going to just fold it all together, count to 10, and I promise what looks like a scrambled egg mess is going to look like amazing vanilla bean pastry cream in no time. We're going to transfer this to a bowl that's not so hot. Oh, that's gorgeous. Can you see those flecks of real vanilla bean? It looks awesome. So we're going to transfer this to a bowl that's not so hot, and then we're going to take a pat of butter and just kind of rub it over the surface, and that prevents the skin from forming. And then we'll use some plastic wrap and press it so that it actually comes in contact with the surface of the pastry cream to prevent that skin from forming. And we're going to let this chill down, and at that point it will become even thicker and it'll get that really lovely texture that you're looking for. If you didn't want to make vanilla pastry cream, if you wanted to make chocolate pastry cream, which I'll show you, looks amazing. Like this is a half batch of the chocolate that I made yesterday. When you're at this step of taking it off the stove, instead of adding the vanilla bean, you can add about 6 ounces of your favorite chopped chocolate and just let it sit, and the heat from the pastry cream will melt the chocolate, and then whip it all together and it will be really, really lovely. You can also add salted caramel and let that heat melt the caramel and fold it all in. Add another pinch of salt. Yum, it'll be amazing. So at this point, we're ready to chill it down, and we've ended up with some really amazing pastry cream. Before I put this away in the fridge and let it chill, I cannot resist pastry cream, so I'm just gonna treat myself, get a clean spoon, make sure that it's not too hot, be very careful, blow on it if you have to. I'm just gonna taste some while it's still warm. Oh my gosh. It's amazing to me how such simple ingredients like milk and eggs and sugar just take on this luxurious, amazing custard with just a little bit of heat and technique. So remember that baking and cooking things like this, it's just like ballet. It takes some fundamental techniques like tempering and whisking and cooking things together. And once you master those, you are rewarded with a pot of gold. This is amazing. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll show you how to use pastry cream as a cream puff filling or an eclair filling next week. Thanks and enjoy.